right, everybody. Welcome back. This is the Texas Real Estate and Finance Podcast. Now, if the letters A and I in today's little title made your eyes roll and halfway expect us to be discussing how you're about to get replaced by a laptop that works weekends and never asks for a commission split, take a big, deep breath. That is not what this is about. But here is a little secret that nobody is selling you on. A $999 AI masterclass that you don't need 40 tools. You don't need 50 prompts. You don't need 10 autonomous agents. You don't need a data science degree. You don't need a robot butler named Chad. You need about 3 basic things to start out that actually give you your time back. And that's what most of our show is going to be about today. Now, in full transparency, before we get rolling here, I am a little rusty. I took about 6 months off from the show. Life happened. I went on my own little AI journey. I rebranded some things, and my mic got a little dusty. So I did my first market update just last week, and it was the first one in half a year. And this right here, well, this is the first guest episode back in the saddle. So if I fumble up a word or two, then we're going to go ahead and file that under being authentic and just keep on rolling. So my name is Mike Mills, your host, a Texas mortgage banker for over 17 years, and statistically the person in this room most likely to get way too excited about a chatbot. So today I brought myself a backup. My guest is a repeat offender on the show, Mr. Jeff Loyd, president and co-founder of Cloud Team Realty, one of the very first brokerages in DFW, built AI first from the studs up. And his whole thing, his whole tagline is, I'm not a robot, which I have to say is exactly what a robot would tell you. So let's watch out for this guy. Anyway, Jeff, how is the Matrix treating you today?
Goodness. I think it is the most exciting time I have ever lived. I'm very much enjoying what's happening in the world.
That is a strong statement. So now, depending on what's happening in the world and how you want to describe that, it can go different ways, obviously. But in your case, in your instance, yes. From your point of view, what are you seeing? What is it that has you so excited?
So I answered you in context of AI yes. in real estate, and so it is the most exciting time because the capabilities that have been brought to bear that are very inexpensive, like through these large language models, these chatbots, it is something I've been dreaming of since I was 8 years old. You know, when my dad brought home our first computer, in it was a sound card called a Sound Blaster, and it came with a program called Polly the Parrot. And I could talk to Polly. It really sucked, right? But I could talk to Polly, and Polly could talk back. It was a robotic voice. It was nothing like what we have today.
Sure.
It was stupid, but it made my mind dream.
Yes.
And today I feel like what we have at our disposal through these chatbots is magical.
Yes.
If you know how to work with them.
Yes. So a lot of folks, like I told you before we came on, I'm teaching CE now as part of one of my gigs, and a lot of my classes are based on this stuff. How to use AI in your business, how it works, etc. And I will tell you that I haven't got the impression that there's a lot of agents out there that fear for their job. As far as I think there's plenty of jobs out there that you should be concerned about if you are in that realm. It doesn't mean most of them are going away. It just means that it will require less people to do those jobs because now, we have another tool at our disposal. But in the world of real estate, especially for agents, I think there's a pretty secure spot for them, simply because buying a home is a personal transaction. Most people already, we don't like talking to the automated chatbot on the phone. We don't like talking to the person from somewhere else in the world on the the call center that calls us every day, and people don't want to do that. My wife today was working through Boomtown, which is a CRM, and she had called about some issues. She was trying to get a new client into her Boomtown CRM, and she was talking to an AI chatbot. And I was in the kitchen pouring coffee, and I kind of heard, and I was like, that sounds weird. What is going on over there? Because it just sounded strange. And I looked at her and go, is that a chatbot? And she's like, yeah. And it was like talking to her. Yeah. And she asked for a human and it got her with a human. But point of all that being is it's already permeating. This isn't a podcast about, hey, AI's coming, everybody get ready. No. It is here. Okay. It is 100% here. It's in more things than you realize. So, when you look at the roles that agents play going forward with this new technology, you say you're not a robot, obviously, you're a realtor just like everybody else. So where do these tools fit in? And, just on a basic level, when someone's looking at this, not going knee deep into it, where do they even begin, to start getting acclimated to this?
Well, I commend you for teaching CE. Because that's awesome. And I think you've got a great way of educating folks. And I would say the first thing that I would encourage an agent to do is look at these tools as a way of educating yourself. And you can do that in multiple different ways. We all know that AI hallucinates, which that means that it doesn't necessarily tell you facts all the time, right? So when you want to learn something, you can have the AI cite sources where it gets its information, and I would say that, like, if you want to learn something about, what was, like, you could have it search, for example, and say, what was the most recent change regarding groundwater and seller disclosure notices for realtors? First of all, we all should know that by now. It went into effect July 1st. But like, if you were unsure, you could ask the machine that and say, cite sources. That way you trust but verify, because you need to make sure that it's not, surfacing something that is incorrect. Or you could find something online, maybe from Trek or whatever, and say, summarize this for me or explain this to me like I'm a 3-year-old, because there's a lot of legalese.
Yes.
So I think education is the first thing. Another educational item I think the agents can use right now is role playing. And so every deal is different. I mean, you as a mortgage person know, not everything is the same. There's always something that's different.
Yes.
We as agents, we are in sales and marketing. And so, you could create a prompt for the AI to be a skeptical homeowner who's looking to negotiate your commission down 3% or something, right? Or 2.5%. So, I would say you can learn by doing, by having the machine be the opposing view. And so you can really kind of practice your confidence before you go talk to that real person, because they may be saying that to you. And then you're like, oh man, my negotiation skills need some help. Do that. And I say that, and it actually works. We have an agent that went through that exact same situation. And this agent came to me and said, they're asking, because, they're a family friend, they're asking for, 2% less on my commission. So I'd have to take the listing for 1%.
Right.
And she's like, what should I do? And so I just wrote a prompt and I gave it to her. I said, put this in the machine and work with it. Mm-hmm. And she came back a day later and she got her full commission on the listing agreement.
Yeah.
So good for her.
Yeah. Well, what's funny about that, because, again, I have students in my classes occasionally that will bring up things along the lines of, how do I know what it's telling me is true? Or how do I check this? Or how does, I don't want it to think for me. That's another thing I see often is people talk about critical thinking. It's like, well, AI is going to remove critical thinking completely from people's ability. And you know what? Probably there will be some of that, I'm sure, because people won't want to think for themselves. But what it also does is I think it unlocks your brain a little bit more, because like in that scenario that you're talking about, when you're doing this role play, the agent with the chat bot or the AI bot, in that case, they are saying something to you or bringing something up that it's not that you didn't know that, or that you hadn't heard that, or you couldn't have thought of that. It's just that it was locked away somewhere in the back of your brain, that this chatbot or this model brought up to the surface, that now you go, oh yes, I remember. That's a good way to go about this. I forgot about that. Right. So when I look at how to use these models sometimes, especially on the learning side of things, a lot of it is, I've built, just like you've done way more than me, but I've built a ton of stuff. I built a website, I've built workflows, I've built tools to give agents, I built all kinds of things, newsletters, blogs, articles, the whole deal. Built all these things, but there's a journey there. You're kind of learning as you go through on what to do, how to iterate things, what type of documentation you need. And I tell people all the time, it's like, I don't like none of this stuff. You at least have some technical knowledge coming into the world that I did not have. Like I knew I was not a coder. I had nothing to do with tech. I've always been in sales one degree or another. And I just learned by doing, just sitting down with it and saying, here's what I want to do. And it goes, okay, you can do it like this, or you can do it like this, or you can do it like this. Okay, well, let's try this route. And then, you just kind of start to build from there. And so like for me, what anybody that ever asked me on this piece, it's like, just start using it. Just ask it questions. The things that you're going to call, because they'll call me after class, say, hey, how do I do this? I'm like, don't ask me. Ask. I mean, you can ask me, I'll tell you. It's not that, but that's the whole point, is you've got to start thinking of things that you can ask the machine so you can get feedback and you can start to learn.
That's right. That's right. It's something that I am very excited about is, our broker, his name is Neil. He's got years of domain knowledge, and lots and lots and lots of transactions, and educating other people in transactions, obviously the broker. But I'm just super proud of him, because there's so much that he has learned himself with these tools by doing. And, we built this brokerage from the ground up as like AI native, AI first. And he didn't have that. He had all the domain knowledge, right? And so he's building apps that, track transactions, but he's prototyping. And I think that's the key right there, because you and I've had this conversation before. If you don't have the skills to understand what the machine has done, or the skills to be able to instruct the machine to do things in a certain way, then you're kind of building a black box.
Right.
And so what we do with Neil is, he prototypes, and so he works with the machine to create prototypes of things. And or he'll say, man, I have this problem. Right. And so he will ask the machine, what should I do with this? And then I think, to your point about AI is taking all our jobs, I don't think that's the case. I think it's going to take some jobs. I think it's going to make some jobs substantially easier. But Neil still needs somebody with domain expertise on the technical side to make that thing kind of really do what you want it to do. Because a lot of our needs really come down to automation and integration. And most of us who have domain knowledge don't know how to integrate two separate systems together.
Define domain knowledge just real quick, just so if anybody hears domain knowledge, like, well, I got to get a domain name. I don't understand.
Yeah. So domain knowledge is like, hey, I'm a realtor. I understand real estate, and I understand all the aspects of, my job. And so I've got this knowledge, and that knowledge is in the real estate domain, right?
Right.
So Neil's got, real estate broker, both commercial and residential domain knowledge.
Right.
So it's not a domain name. It's really just like what you know and what you understand. And you need people who have different backgrounds and skill sets to really kind of solve for the larger puzzle.
Yeah.
What they're trying to do is less work.
There's an idea that that comes up often where people think about Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, and then they talk about the singularity, right, or the AGI, the thing that's gonna know everything and take over the world and all of these things, right? And the reality is, on the ground level where we're working now, I don't know what Elon and OpenAI and all of them are working on, but on our level, what we're working on is how to take a model and train it to do a very specific thing. We're human beings. We have very specific things that we do. You're a realtor. I'm a lender. There's title people. There's insurance people. There's plumbers. There's electricians. There's all these people. Now, I know a little bit about real estate. I'm sure you know a little bit about lending, et cetera. So we all have a general rounded knowledge, but we all get very specific in the world that we exist and make our money, which is no different than building these AI models. Is that, yes, can some of them do all the things or answer any question? I mean, yes, but no, because you have to give it that specific knowledge, and that still comes from a human. That's right. Still, as you said, you're still carrying the domain information, or, the domain of what you know, and you're imparting that onto the machine. And all the builders know this, by the way, because I'm sure you've seen, there are literally companies like OpenAI that are hiring people to train their models how to do their jobs. Yep. So people are getting paid to train an AI model how to do a job. So then one day that AI model can take over their job, which is crazy to me, but that is happening.
Yep. I've read about that. So they're bringing in people of all different expertise.
Yes.
To do this training. Yeah. And that's really, that's what you all bring to the table today. It's just, you're not leveraging maybe the machine with your knowledge to maybe do some of the things that could help you out.
So I want to get a little basic on this, just because, and again, through all my classes, I am still pretty surprised at how many agents don't really fully, I mean, they know what AI is. Everybody does. They generally know what it does, or think they know what it does, but I think most people still think of it as Google. Ask a question, get an answer, kind of a thing. But I want you to talk a little bit about two things. First off, most agents use ChatGPT. I started on ChatGPT, but then I met you, and you told me to get on Claude. And so now I've been on Claude for a year, and I will never go back to Chat. I'm sure there's been improvements, but so you can update me on your journey there. And then secondly, just some kind of basics of, I don't want you to walk through setting it up, but I want you to talk about instructions on how it responds. I want you to talk about projects versus chats versus stuff like co-work and coding. So as an overview, so people understand, like, there are different methods and modes for these things, and then get a little bit into context, like how you train them, where these context docs that are important and all that.
Yeah. So journey first. I have been using a lot of Gemini lately, and so that's Google's version.
Yep.
And for most agents, they have a Gmail account. Yep. Residential at least, and Gemini's built into Gmail now, and Google Docs, and all the things. So, I would say, kind of from a journey perspective, the agents could probably get the most lift immediately by leveraging Gemini inside their Gmail. Who did I forget to follow up with last week? Who did I miss? Do I have any upcoming meetings? I wrote something in a Word doc somewhere. What was that? And now Gemini can record, Google Meet calls. So if any realtors do that, then all of those get stored into the machine. So, while I haven't been using that because I don't use Gmail for work, I think it's a good place to start. I mean, with Chat, you can connect Chat to your email, but that's so much more difficult than it is to just log into your Gmail and chat with Gemini right there.
Yes.
So from like a my journey perspective, we leverage a lot of the large language model behind the scenes. So those are called APIs, and that's a very technical term for a computer can use it without a human interfacing with it.
Yep.
But yeah, right now I use a lot of Gemini, and I also, there is a competitive product to Claude Cowork, Codex by ChatGPT, and Anti-Gravity by Google.
Okay.
And so, they all limit you. You will get limited. Okay. If you use the free version of any of these things, do not put client data in there.
Right.
You need to pay for it. I think that for any agent out there, spend the $20 a month to get a paid account at least, where your data can be turned off for surfacing into the machine. When it comes to the different capabilities in these different tools, you want to think about it like, you have a conversation with somebody. Let's say you're at a networking event, right? And you have a conversation with somebody. Then you go to somebody else, you have a conversation with them. And then you go to somebody else, you have a conversation with them. If you don't have like memory turned on within your tool, your chat tool, then the conversations, your chats are all like that networking group. This guy over here doesn't know what, this guy over here said to you. And so they're basically in a lot of ways compartmentalized. Now, if you have memory on, then memory can surface some of that stuff. But projects are like creating a walled garden where you can have lots of chats that all understand what all the other chats are. And you keep it in a contextual, you keep it in a walled garden, It's like, I want this in this box. This is my box for shoes. This is my box for hats, right? And so you have a hat project and a shoe project. And then, you can keep kind of the relevancy there. I think if you're paying for the tool, think of in the real estate world, when we have a deal, we call them files. Okay. Even though it's multiple files in a file, and so like, think of a project as like maybe an address, a listing agreement, or a project as a couple buyers, like husband and wife buyer. And so you can store contextually relevant things to that particular listing address or those particular buyers in that project. And so that way it's not just muddied up across all memory, but it's compartmentalized. And so you'd be like, oh man, I had shared, with my project here, like a bunch of files, that I got, like pictures of the house, hey, machine, what are some things that I could do to make this house more appealing for our professional photos that come in?
Yeah. Well, you could even do, like, I've explained it like this before too, with projects, is like, I have a project that's purely like a travel coordinator or a travel guide or whatever you want to call it, where it's got, I'll give it context documentation with links to, Travelocity or Orbitz or, whatever search sites they want. It's got information about me and my family, how old everybody is, what we kind of like to do, when we travel, what our favorite things are, who we are to some extent. And then, in that project, anytime we take a trip or go on a vacation, then inside of a chat in that project, I can say, okay, we're taking a cruise to Alaska. Here's our itinerary, here's how long we're going to be here. Here's how long we're going to be here. Help me find some things that we can do while we're in these different destinations based on our profile, et cetera. And so now, not only does that, I get to give that chat feedback when we're, even when I'm on vacation, like, hey, that electric bike ride was awesome. That was a great suggestion. Thanks. So now it records that stuff. So when I go schedule our trip, to go to the beach or, whatever it is that we're going to do, I can tell it, hey, go back and look at these old chats, see if there's anything in there that might be contextually relevant. And, if you have the good connector set up and everything, you can actually update your context documentation inside of that. So you put things in there that say, hey, here's the basics. And then later on, you might say, well, we like to eat out, but my daughter really hates, pizza. And so now it knows, okay, well, let's try to eliminate the pizza restaurants because that's not what she wants to do. Yeah. And it just kind of, as you learn, it learns, and you can tell it to record that stuff. So you just get better and better. But it's all in mind. It's all about travel, or it's all about your buyers, or it's all about your sellers, or it's all about, your cars that you own that you're trying to fix and maintain, or whatever. It's just so many different options for it.
Yeah. And it's a really good, use case, the travel one. When you think about like Gemini from Google, the nice thing about it is it's integrated with the Google ecosystem. So you could, as an agent, you may have multiple properties that you're going to go do a showing. You can just paste those into Gemini and say, route these in this order because I can only I don't know what's it going to be. It'll bring Google Maps directly in.
Like give me the fastest route from A to Z. I would prefer to go in this order, but we can adjust it or whatever.
Yeah, and use traffic patterns of the past, or we're going to leave it 5.
Right.
Now, you can also chat with Google Maps now. So Google Maps has that ability. So I would say, encouraging somebody to just learn by doing. Go start using it. And think about, I like to say the art of the possible. What could be true,
Yeah.
So when it comes to maybe the next point in the journey, you're going to hear a lot of things about agents. So you went kind of a little bit deeper on the projects, giving it, like you said, connectors.
Can you discuss, like, as you're talking about this, can you talk about the idea of co-work, or whatever Gemini's version of that is, and how, because it's kind of a progression, right? It's kind of a general chat.
Yep.
Excuse me. Projects. Then you maybe get into co-work, and then somewhere along the lines, agents, and then maybe coding after that. There's a hierarchy of these things, as you kind of go down your journey. So connect those two if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. So co-work is a tool from Anthropic, which is the people that make Claude. Originally, there was a product called Claude Code, and out of Claude Code came Claude Co-work. And so now that's kind of reverse as far as what we're talking about is the journny. But
yeah,
Claude Co-work was actually built by
Claude Code.
Claude Code, yeah. So when you think of like co-work, you're thinking about what things could a machine do for me that would make my life easier. It's really just, I would say, automation, 2.0. So Claude Co-work can do things for you that you can, like projects, assign skills, and you can download skills. They're just documents, so it's nothing spectacular or crazy.
A skill is just like a repeatable task that it does in a certain way that it's like hard coded in there. You're almost like giving it an extra little, hey, every time you make a PDF, do it like this, or every time you make a Google sheet, do it like this, or whatever.
They're rules plus, again, I'm going to use the word domain knowledge. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think of skills, and you could have a skill that is, like you said, a PDF writer. And in that PDF writer, you've updated skill. I always want my logo in the upper right-hand corner. And this is the logo file that you'll use. And you're basically just giving instructions that are repeatable. And then you can have Claude Co-work go do things for you, and with the connectors, it can go do things in other systems for you, not just locally. I think most people are used to using maybe chat on their phone, and everything is within that one kind of window, and you're like, oh, but what if I want chat to send an email for me? Well, Claude Co-work can send emails for you. It can read inboxes for you. But that also, like Uncle Ben always said from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So
Right.
if you give a machine great power, you better understand what it could potentially do.
Yeah, I don't know that a lot of I don't know a lot of folks understand that you can actually, and I've again just been learning this over the last year or so, but the amount of access to your hard drive, your computer, your internet server, all that you can give these large language models is immense. I mean, you can give them almost complete autonomous control. There are some stop gaps in there, but you can certainly do that if you want to. Now it's not just like you push a button and they have access to everything. You have to connect specific things and, give it specific access and ask for approval or not approval. Like there's ways to do it safely, if you know how to set it up right. But also as just an in-depth, the more you know about it, the more you can connect, the more you can say, okay, I want you to do this, but only do this if I say that, or I want you to do this, but only do this if I say that. So for an example, one of my very first co-work projects that I built was part of one of my classes is teaching agents about how AI finds you online, right? How does it search? Because 90% of people start their home search online. Now, whether they're using AI or they realize it, they are. If they're going through Google, they're using Gemini. There you go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about branding and making sure that everything is the same. Like I'm Mike Mills Mortgage on Instagram, but I'm Mike Mills, Home Loans on Facebook, and I'm, Mike Mills FHA on YouTube or whatever. Well, AI thinks I'm three different people. It doesn't realize I'm the same person. Search thinks I'm three different people. So we talk about unifying your brand, et cetera, right? Well, one of the things that I do for folks when we go through that class is I offer them a brand audit, which just basically means I have Claude go use my browser, my Chrome browser, and it'll go and it'll search for a name, a phone number, and an email and a brokerage and try to coordinate those four things, right? So it knows we built a scoring rubric. We built the different ones that we're measuring. It gives them a score at the end, tells them things they can fix. I built like, here's what you want to look for. Here's what it should say. It pulls their headshot, it drops it into a folder, and then it basically generates an entire audit report that posts onto my website. That it's a gated page, so you can't get it just randomly. Yeah. But I posted onto my website, and so now I can show an agent, here's what AI found about you, here's what it said, here's where your gaps are, here's the things you should probably fix, blah 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 blah, right? And when I was building it, it took some time, right? Because I'm like, I don't want to look like that. That's not, how do I get it to my website, or where can I host it so I can send it? So I'm solving problems as I go through on like, what's the best method to go from A to Z on this deal? So it took 4 or 5 different iterations, testing it out, doing the whole deal. Well, now I can literally go into Cowork and I can type in an agent name, phone number, email, and their brokerage and go for it. And it takes about 5 to 10 minutes, maybe. It runs through. I even optimized it for token use. So like when I first set it up, the way the instructions read and how my context doc were held, it was just chewing up tokens. So like I'd run 2 and I'd be out for the day. And I'm like, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? Yep. So then I start optimizing for token usage, and people go, how do you know how to do all this? I don't. I just said, hey, Claude, you're using up all my tokens. How do we fix that problem? And it goes, oh, well, if you do this and you do this and you do this, that'll great. Sounds good. Let's do that. Right. Yeah. So it's like going through that, but now it spits it out. It's perfect. It gives me a terminal prompt that I copy and paste in my terminal, which then posts to my website, makes it a live page, and that's it. So now I can send a client or an agent an email. It's got the link, the hyperlink in there. Click on this, see your prescription, see your audit profile. Then I have a prescription and I have other things that come after it. But it's just like that very first one I built, it was just so eye-opening for me because I got to experience like, okay, you're testing and you're failing and you're like, there were a few times where we went, I spent 6 hours one day going back and forth on getting the scoring right. And at one point I'm like, hey, this is too much. Like, we are so detailed. Why are we going this far? I'm like, simple is better. Automation is more important. And it even came back to me and Claude was like, you know what? Because I was copying and pasting this Claude, talking to this Claude, talking to this Claude, talking to this Claude. And and they just got into this, they like nerded out on scoring. And so it just made it nearly impossible to ever complete it. And I go, okay, what are we doing? Like, you know what? I'm sorry. That's my fault. I got really, really technical. We didn't need to get that technical. We'll keep it simple. And then we got right back on track and it was fine. But it's just like going through that, right? That process and that learning is so eye-opening. I mean, have you done, I know you're into agents and all that other stuff, but like when you're building some of your stuff, is that kind of your experience as well?
100%. I mean, even though we know all the things, you still have things you have to solve for. So I'll give you an example of one of the things that we did. Now, this isn't going to necessarily apply to the average, sales agent, but for brokers have a lot of compliance that they have to manage, right? One of the things that we need to manage as a brokerage is continuing education. All right, so what happens when an agent comes to their renewal and they haven't hit their continuing education requirements? Well, their license gets suspended and they can't practice real estate. And if you are a full-time agent, that means no income. And so you've got to go make up your CE credits in order for your license to get reinstated before it gets expired in 60 days. The TREC gives you about 60 days after suspension. So that's the problem, because we were going to hire a person to manage that. And so we started writing an SOP of what the brokerage needed to do to manage CE credits so none of our agents would unknowingly have their license suspended for something as little as not meeting the credit requirement.
Yeah. SOP, again, standard operating procedure. Just some people, like I always just get lost in acronyms. I'm like, what did that mean? I'm supposed to know that. I'm a dummy. Why do I not know what that means?
Yep. It's just a standard process that you follow, that you've written down, so that if the person that executes that process moves on to a different role, then somebody else could come in and know exactly what to do. Right. So we wrote a standard operating procedure for what a person would do to manage CE credits across the brokerage. And I'm like, why are we hiring a person to do this? This is automatable, right? And so really what we needed to do was we needed to, one, know all of the agents that are in the brokerage. So we needed a source of truth of that. And it's not always TREC, because when you have associate brokers, they're not listed under the broker in TREC. So they have their own. So you need a source of truth of all the agents in your brokerage. So we have one. So we had to connect that to a tool like Claude Cowork, so that Claude Cowork knew who to look up on TREC. And then all your CE credits are publicly posted on TREC's website. And so Claude Cowork can look at the web and it can pull up that person from that list, look at all their CE credits, add them all up by year. And then TREC is very specific on what things you need to accomplish each year. One, in your first 2 years as an agent, and then subsequent years as far as number of education credits. And then we had to connect it to some sort of notification system. We chose email. So we have a tool now that on the first of every month, an agent goes out to TREC, adds up all the credits for all of our agents. And then if they're, to your point about scoring, we put people in a red, green, or yellow kind of state, right?
Yep.
And so then we email them. And you know what's amazing is we have saved a few agents from utter peril, because it's like, oh my gosh, I have 245 CEs to do. Oh,
you got 2 months.
It's 2 months. Boy, I'm glad this was brought to my attention, because if it was like next week, I wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
So, and then we had another agent. They're like, oh.
Now, when you say agent, just so I can clarify, because again, no. It's important because it's the difference between agent and so there's agent, the realtor that you're talking about to some extent. Then there's the AI agent, which could be somewhat confused with a co-work project because it kind of is acting like an agent, right? It is doing stuff on your behalf that's scheduled from start to finish, where essentially you don't do anything. You just have it set up to say every month or every 2 weeks at this date, at this time, you do these tasks. And then whatever your result is, you send emails to these people in this format and let them know and copy me or whatever, right? And then at no point do you ever have to go in there and mess with it, except they tweak out, they get wrong, they get stuck, something happens, the website changes on what it is, so you got to make some adjustments, which goes back to, if you don't know how the thing works because you had zero involvement in its build, you'll never know how to fix it. So if you're going to pay someone $2,000 to build this autonomous thing that's going to help you do it, and then you have no idea how it works, well, you're kind of just throwing money in the garbage.
Yeah, that's true. It's also scary too.
Yes. Oh yeah.
If you're relying on that, whatever that thing is,
because they may have put some kind of backdoor into your computer that you have no idea about, that you don't know where to look.
Yeah, exactly. But
and it's those basic things, those very simple, boring, like that process that you just described, right? My brand audit was cool. It was, hey, here's this pretty little picture and it makes all this stuff, and it's like, oh, it's awesome. What you're talking about is something simple, boring, and mundane. But you would have had to pay somebody to do it, or you would have had to done it yourself, which is you're paying your time, right? And in this case, you just said, here's this thing that I need to get done, and it sucks and it's annoying. Surely I can automate this. And then you worked through the process inside of your large language model and built it out. And I think that's the piece that agents miss, is they want it to edit a video and make a social media campaign and do all this kind of stuff, which kind of do to some extent. It's not very good sometimes, but whatever. But it's the mundane things, the things that are boring and repeatable and simple, that chew up hours of your day that you just don't realize until you start thinking, is there a way I can automate this? Because that's really what I want to do.
Yeah, 100%. I think that it takes some deep thinking to sit down and say, what could I do differently?
Yeah.
And so, here's another example. Data analysis. So MLS gives us lots of data, right? Yep. On a listing that I was helping a realtor out with, so we don't overload the word agent. They were having a hard time kind of pricing a property because it was unique, right?
Okay.
And it was in a unique area. So I went into MLS, and I went into the area, geographic kind of circle radius, and I had punched in some characteristics of that particular property in order to find, basically comps. And I went back 2 years and I said, I told the MLS, give me all the expireds, all the withdrawns, all the cancels, all the pendings, all the actives, and all the closeds. And so I got 10 Excel spreadsheets that I downloaded from MLS. And when I say I told MLS, I was clicking buttons. I wasn't actually using large language model. So I pulled all those files into, a chatbot like Claude. And I said, I want to know kind of some, characteristics about, over the past 2 years, what the market is basically saying to properties like this. What are the commonalities between the, cancels and withdrawals? I want to know about percentages of, total went on market versus total made it to a close. And what was, did the price change? What was the fluctuation? So basically give me some characteristics. And in that particular instance, I used a deep research model, and it gave me a complete report with which then I, as an agent, read through. And then I said, okay, this is the problem with that particular property, and this is what we should list it at. because the market is saying, if you want to sell it, it needs to be here.
Right.
And so
Domain knowledge again, right? You have domain knowledge. It gives you get the data, but then you use your domain knowledge to interpret the data properly to benefit your client.
yes. And I knew how to instruct the machine on what to look for.
Right.
And so that's what, so you have the content, you put it in the machine. You give the machine your outcome. You tell the machine the things that you're looking for, and then it gives you back something. Now you interpret that. And that saved me like a day and a half of data analysis and charts in Excel and all sorts of stuff. So you can use these machines for to help you come up with maybe some directional guidance on how you might be able to back up what your gut feeling is. Because a lot of times you go in, you're like, I think this should be this price. Yeah. And I'm just feeling that way. But I don't know.
Well, I can use it often in my business, like from the complicated to the simple, right? One of the simple things that I do is when I talk to a borrower, I pre-approve them in the beginning, and I go through and get all their information. But as far as what I give to the chatbot, for example, I'll say this person's name, I'll say the price range that they're looking in, I'll say, a few details related to, what type of rates we're looking at, what type of loan we're doing, how much money they're putting down, nothing personal, not their birth dates or social securities or anything like that. Just, because I have all that, just, here's the basic fundamentals of them. And what it does for me is I have a project that is all about, it's called my borrower question and answer. Meaning I've got my guidelines loaded in there. I've got some of my interior products loaded in there. And then it's got some parameters on when I answer questions, when I quote things, if I generate a pre-approval letter, whatever the case may be, it has a few parameters it has to follow. So I can start basically a new chat for every borrower that I'm dealing with and give it some general context. And then when that borrower texts me on a Saturday and I'm sitting at my son's baseball tournament and I don't have my computer in front of me, like, can I figure out a payment for a property? Yeah. It's going to take me 20 minutes because I got to look it up on Zillow and see if the taxes are right and, whatever, punching it. Or I can just go back to my chat and go, everything about this borrower, how much money, not everything, but a lot of stuff, how much money they're putting down, what type of loan program I'm looking at, how MI factors work for FHA versus conventional and yada, yada, yada. Right. And so here's this new address. Here's the Zillow link. Here's the purchase price. I need a payment estimate really quick. 2 minutes later, here you go. In a text message, I can respond right back to him, copy, paste, done. Right. And so those little questions that you have to answer. That's why I tell agents, start, have a buyer project and give it all. And I've built one that I give to them in my classes. I'm like, give each borrower or each buyer their own chat, sit down with them, tell the chat the first thing, hey, I'm going to meet the Martinez's, here's their address, or excuse me, they have 2 kids. They want to move from McKinney to Mansfield. They're looking in this price range, whatever. You go meet with them, you record your conversation with their permission, right? So you get everything, all the context from that. You take the transcript out of your phone from your iPhone because it gives you a transcript. You drop it into the chat and you go, okay, help me identify some properties. It gives you the parameters. You put it into your MLS and then you start going from there, right? And so now you don't miss context by trying to remember everything that they told you. You don't have to sit down and write down everything because then you look like you're maybe not paying attention. Like you can actually be engaged in the conversation that you're having with them. And then every time, especially if you're dealing with multiple buyers or multiple sellers, every time they text you or call you or email you a question, you don't have to go back into your memory and go, okay, what was that about? I hadn't talked to them for 3 months. I forgot what they were saying. No, your chat has all of the context because you keep feeding it and it keeps helping you. So it's such a brain saver. It is I don't think it takes, because again, people say, oh, well, you're just outsourcing your thinking. No, I am outsourcing my memory. My thinking is now more powerful. What's the computer? Because what's the RAM versus the processor or whatever it is, right? Yeah. So I've uploaded all my memory to the cloud so I can pull it down whenever I want. And now I've freed up my hard drive memory to actually do real thinking, right?
Yep. Basically, I get what you're saying. And you're 100% right. The other thing is, let's talk about connectors. In that workflow that you were just describing, you pull that transcript into chat, and instead of going to MLS, just connect it to realtor.com and say, hey, use realtor.com and find some properties that this person would like.
Yeah.
And so realtor.com is, they've got an integration with ChatGPT.
So Zillow, right?
Yep. But we don't like Zillow as agents, so we don't talk about Zillow.
Well, yeah, Zillow just unloaded or just released a platform to 20,000 of its agents to beta test, where essentially the AI model monitors all the search, all the things that are going on, so they can identify when they think people are going to sell. They can identify when people are going to buy, and as an agent, you get that lead essentially into your inbox, and your job is to call them and get them. And they're using all the data mining when someone goes on to Zillow's website to see who's doing what, where, and when. Not that they haven't kind of been doing that all the way along. The piece that they just maybe realized or haven't realized or whatever is people still want to deal with humans. They don't want to deal with a robot. And so, especially on a home purchase, like there's a lot of things where I can do the chat bot, if I'm trying to get my DMV thing worked out, just answer me so I can figure this out. But it's a whole other thing when I want to buy a home. I want to talk to a human being. And so they're bridging the gap, and they're going, okay, we're going to give our humans, the ones that we hire, that we don't pay anything, that, we take all the money from, and we're going to give them all of our data so they have access to it. And then they're going to call your clients and try to take them away because we've given them, the data that you don't have, you have access to, but you don't know how to use, which is the whole point of what we're talking about today.
Yep. 100%. I wasn't trying to blast Zillow, but there's a,
I was.
Okay. There's a love-hate relationship, I think. But I think that when you think about your workflows, that's really what you got to do before you go pay anybody anything, before you go even try to make something. Because let's be honest, a lot of agents have ADHD. And so you'll start working on something, and the next thing you know, you're building a pool. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so you really got to sit down for a few minutes, and I'd say it's probably more like 20, 30 minutes, and think through the things that you repeatedly do, or the things that could potentially be a time saver, and then write down the steps.
Well, I'll go one further for you.
Go.
Sit down with Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT or whatever large language model you have and say, I want to automate some stuff. Here's my job. Here's what I do. Here's, where I work. Help me understand, or help me work through what my process is. Ask me questions one at a time so I can figure out what I want to. I don't even know. I'm sitting down and thinking, I don't know. And then you don't have to sit and ponder. You can, but you don't have to, because you have a partner helping you work through it. You don't have to write it down because it's all logged in the system. And now it's remembering everything that you're trying to accomplish. And if you want to go, hey, keep a log of this because there's no way in hell I'm going to remember all this as we go back. Say, I want a running list that I can go back to and refer. It'll go, cool, no problem. Here's the list. Whenever you're ready to come back to tackle the next thing, let me know. And here we go. Right. So you're exactly right. Sit down and think about it, but use the tool to help you do that, because even that can be automated.
Yeah, I love that idea. I mean, and you know what? It's even easier nowadays because you can just speak to it as opposed to type. And some of us, we're just streams of consciousness coming out of our face, so that's good. It's really good.
And you can tell it that. I do that all the time. My Claude's name is Aria. She's a British female. And so when we chat with each other, I'll tell her, I'm like, hey, I'm going stream of consciousness on this one. There's a bunch of stuff running through my brain. I just want to dump it all out so I don't forget it. And I'm usually driving in my car and like, hey, here's what I'm thinking about. And it'll be like, cool. And I'm dork. I even have a project that's just random thoughts, just random stuff that I'll go check every once in a while and get updated and see what I can find.
I'll get a little bit more deep on some things now. And I want to tell you the journey of Cloud Team and what we kind of started with.
Please.
So we originally started with off-the-shelf tools that we connected together and then added AI integrations too. So for example, we had a CRM that's just off the shelf. And you had to basically beat agents to go use it, because using a CRM isn't necessarily fun. But you're like, I got to, because I've got to do my outreach and I've got to remember these people's phone number, and my iPhone contacts are just way too many. So we had a CRM. It was very optimized for AI. It could do all sorts of things. It could write the emails for the agents. We had an app that the agents had on their phone where, record the conversation. Like we had that 2 years ago in the app, and it would save to the CRM record immediately afterwards. Awesome. Yeah. And then it would write the email, it would reference the transcript. So we had that, but getting people to use it was the hard thing. And so we thought a long time, and we spent a lot of time, with what we call adoption, which is, getting people to use the stuff. And then we thought, well, you know what? The problem with this isn't the capabilities of AI or the tools. The problem is desire. And so nobody really wants to, write things down until they really have to. It's like, oh, I need to write a contract. Yeah, that's money, right? So, okay, I'm going to go do that. Or I got a lead. I got somebody who's interested. I need to go find them properties. So I go do that. So it's really that motivation that is what we were trying to capture. And so what we did was we got rid of nearly all off the shelf stuff. We created Chat with the MLS nearly 2 years ago. So you could actually describe, like what you're seeing in Realtor and Zillow now, we did 2 years ago. We brought that forward, and we built our own CRM that it starts with, and this is where domain knowledge is important. You log into a CRM and you're like, oh, I got a dashboard of all this stuff. Here's contacts, whatever. My life may not start with a contact. It starts with an opportunity, right?
Right.
We call them deals. So it's like, Mike, you come to me and you're like, hey, Jeff, I've been thinking about partnering with this other guy, and we're looking at maybe buying some land over here. It's like, well, okay, in a CRM, I'm like, okay, I got to add Mike Mills to my CRM and other guy who I don't know yet,
Yes.
So it's like, well, no, I have a land deal, right? And, Mike is maybe a client or a lead or somehow associated. The deal is the property. And that for me as an agent, that's really what it comes down to. So what we had to do was we had to go through a different way of thinking of what does an agent need to do that they're motivated to do, that we won't have to really get them to try to do. Sounds crazy. And then what are some motivating factors? So whenever you first create a deal in our new CRM, it asks a couple questions about, like, Mike, you probably know your budget for whatever that property is. Oh yeah, I want to spend 500,000. So you punch in 500,000 because you're going to need that anyway for your MLS searches, right? So it's not getting people to put something in that they don't want to, but they're doing it because they're going to need it later. And so really it's then like all of the things that an agent needs in order to close a transaction is kind of phased through the actual workflow approach that an agent would normally take. And it's technically different for every deal type. And so like the process is different. And so like our tool follows the process of what that deal type is like. And the only way we were able to build that is by knowing what that was like, because we experienced it, because we had that domain knowledge. And so whenever an agent logs in, they first create a deal, right there is their dashboard to be able to move that deal to the next stage, and a big box right next to it that shows them their commission. And so they're always looking at,
the carrot's always there.
Carrot's always right there. And so it's like, oh, and then what do you need to do next? And so then our AI, all of our AI tech is now under the hood surfacing things. It's like, hey, and it organizes their day according to things that may be going stale or things that are whatever. And then we've got do this for me buttons. So it's like, hey, Mike, you probably should send a follow-up email to Sam because it's been a week and a half and you said you were going to do this. And then we have a button that says do it for me. So we're not like actually, doing all these things without the agents understanding, the realtors understanding. They're like, yes, that's what I want, So, and that goes all the way down to the transaction docs. I mean, you said tax data, right? We've got tax integrations. So as soon as a property is entered, all that data is fed in, and so then the agent just needs to do, I would say, due diligence, just validate.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And we built that with code, cloud.
Yes, that's the next iteration, and I do think that's where, and I've said this to multiple brokers, and even on the mortgage side of things, that the third party companies, the ones who build your app, the ones who build your website, the ones who host the CRMs, and all those they're I don't want to say they're going to go away, because some people will never take the time to do their own. It's like, anybody can mow their yard, but we still have plenty of landscapers out there that mow people's yard. But the value of it, I think, will be decreased because it's easier to build. Somebody who's really motivated and wants to put it together can do it on their own. And if you do, you save yourself a ton of money. So there's a good amount of motivation there to do that. So I do think that, as a broker, especially, or a small business owner, the more things that you can build on your own, the more money you're going to save, the more efficient your business is going to become. And the more domain knowledge, turning it back to the very beginning, you gain by just doing that yourself. It's like, you think you know what it is to run your plumbing business, or you think you know what it is to run your roofing business. But then once you actually start getting in there and asking it to help you automate and create processes and SOPs and all these things, then you're like, oh yeah, I forgot we got to do this. Or, yeah, oh, I didn't think about that part of it. Or I never even considered adding that layer to this or whatever, And so it just starts opening your eyes. And so I think, as anybody who's self-employed, anybody who has their own business, anybody who's an independent agent, realtor, loan officer, whatever, this stuff is going to make you better at your job. It's going to make you more efficient at your job, and it's going to allow you to help more people. Because, as in our world for lending, we call it margin compression. We call it the banks and the investors and what we get paid versus what we do. Yeah. That number starts to shrink as more companies happen. In your world, it's about commission splits, and it's about, how much a buyer or seller is going to pay you to do a job that, requires more or less depending on what you're doing. And so all of those numbers start to get shrunk. So the days of doing, 3 or 4 loans a month, or 1 transaction a month, or whatever maybe it is, and paying your bills, get a little more challenging. So now you have to do more, but you have more to do more. It's just a matter of learning how to use it.
Yep. And back to the beginning, education, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I would say never stop learning.
One thing before we go, if a person were to come to you tomorrow and say, I've got a ChatGPT account, or I've got a Claude account, or I've got a Gemini, I use it occasionally, but I really want to start putting it into my business. What's the one thing you would say, start here?
Oh my gosh. I
have an answer. It'll help while you think.
So I think a lot of people, they come and they get their shovel and they're, I want to put some AI into that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that's not the right way to solve the problem. That's going to send you down a rabbit hole, and maybe even a very expensive mistake.
Yes.
And I would say the very first thing is, what are you trying to accomplish, and can you do it manually today? If you can do it manually, and then record the steps somehow.
Yes.
And then validate that is something that has all aspects of digitization. So meaning you can access it on a computer. And then you say, I want to have AI do that for me. So I think it's really about, like, I would stop them and say, can you manually do this in a digital way yourself?
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And it's what I think you're saying to a certain extent is you're training yourself, and then you're training the machine to do what you're doing. And the way that I always start it with folks when we do this is, again, I have a thing I built. It's called a brand builder. You literally, it's a context document, you drop it into a project or a chat, and it just interviews you and asks you one question at a time. What's your name? What's your email address? What's your phone number? Who's your ideal client? Where do you live? You know, what are you into? Do you have kids? Do you go to church a lot? Are you into the book club? Are you whatever, right? And how do you talk? Give me some examples of your social media posts. Send me a couple emails, whatever, right? So then it follows through. And then when you get to the end of it, it takes a little bit of time, but when you get to the end of it, it's got a really good working knowledge of who you are and what you believe to yourself to be about. And now you can take that, and whether you want to use Claude or you want to use Gemini or you want to use ChatGPT or whatever, this is a context document that knows not everything about you, but you can go pretty far with it, but knows a lot about you, and you can drop those into any large language model and pick up right what you're doing, and it knows. Now it knows, okay, I know you're a realtor, I know you're in Texas, I know you're trying to do some market analysis, in this region, this is who your client is. Cool. Let me help you with that right away. So what you're saying is train AI on the work that you do. And what I'm saying is train AI on who you are and how you do stuff, and how you two can be synergistic together. And you're doing both things.
I love that. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Jeff, thank you so much. I appreciate you being my first one back. This is something that I love chatting with you about, this kind of stuff, because I'm a dork and a nerd, and you know more than I do in most cases. So it's like, what can I learn today? So you're always a good talk to on this. And we'll definitely do it again sometime soon. But thank you so much. Tell everybody where to find you guys. And if anybody's a realtor and you really want to go knee deep into the AI stuff, I can't recommend a better brokerage. These guys go about as far down the rabbit hole as anybody I know.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me on your awesome show. You can find us at cloudteamrealty.com. If you want, you can call me directly. My number is 682-255-2745, or email me, jeff@cloudteamrealty.com.
All right. Well, everybody enjoy the rest of your week. If you get bored tonight, sit down with ChatGPT or Claude and have a conversation with them. You'll be shocked at what you might find out. So we'll be back again next week with a market update. I promise I will not fall away for 6 months again from here, and we'll keep rolling. So everybody have a good week. Jeff, thank you again. We'll see everybody next time.